Hey y'all, I'm Rylan. Welcome to my channel. I am back today with another single book review video. I've really enjoyed doing these throughout this year to kind of deep dive into some of the books that I've read and share my thoughts on them with y'all. Today's book, as I'm sure you have seen from the title and or thumbnail, is going to be For Phantasma by Kaylie Smith. All I'll say right now is that I was pleasantly surprised by this book and I'm excited to talk about it with y'all today. I do have a format that I follow for my book review videos, so I've got all my notes right here and we're gonna go in order of everything. I will have this video divided into different sections, so if you want to jump ahead to my thoughts on the plot or the characters or content warnings, I do have timestamps down below that can help lead you there. Phantasma by Kaylie Smith is a relatively new release. This book came out in September of this year, so I'm not too far behind in reading it. This is not a book that I let sit on my shelf for a year plus before actually getting to it, so I'm very excited about that. So it's a very new release, very popular on social media right now, and everybody seems to be picking this one up. This is a romantasy book about Ophelia, who wakes up in the middle of the night and discovers that her mother has passed away. And so her necromancer powers have been passed to Ophelia, who is now a necromancer, and all within the span of like 24 hours, I think, her sister also goes missing. So she ends up finding her way to this game called Phantasma that has come to her town of New Orleans, and she signs up to play. She very soon meets a stranger whose name is Blackwell, who offers his help to her throughout the games, throughout the 7 levels that she has to go through, and in return she can help him find something that he has been looking for. She refuses him at first, but they keep finding their way to each other and they eventually agree to help each other out, or she agrees really to help him and he will help her in return. And while they're spending time together and prepping for these games and trying to look for this thing that Blackwell is looking for, they end up kind of growing closer, and the chemistry between them is super palpable, and they slowly fall in love, even though one of the rules of these games are to not fall in love. I do think that it's better to go into this book not knowing too much. That's kind of part of the fun with this one. But this one is a romantasy book. It does take place in the real world with paranormal or like fantastical elements to them, like demons and ghosts and necromancers and all that stuff. But you do have that real world element going on as well, which personally helped me, I think, in terms of getting into the story. All I'm gonna say for the synopsis though, now we're gonna jump into the content warnings, because I do like to share those for the books that I read. Content warnings for Phantasma do include sexual content, blood, death of parent, violence, gore, vomit, self-harm, and grief. I'll have those all typed out as well in the description down below if you want to see them again. But I ended up giving this book 4 stars, which I was pleasantly surprised by. This is not a genre that I normally read. It's not a genre that I normally gravitate toward, but it's a book that makes me want to read more romantasy now, because honestly, I'm obsessed with it. I do my reviews starting with plot and then characters and then my overall thoughts. So starting off with the plot, I thought that this story was super addicting from the very start. It did take me a little bit to get into the story and kind of really be able to place myself into the book and what was going on, but I was very fascinated by the concept of these paranormal beings and this idea of like almost like a Hunger Games type thing going on, where you can sign up for these games and they're very grueling, lots of people die during them, but if you win, like, you get like your greatest wish restored or your greatest wish given to you, I think. And so I thought that was super fascinating. I also thought that the descriptions of the actual events was super action-packed. I was honestly hooked. I could have kept reading about them. If the games were longer than 7 days, I would have kept reading for a while about this plot of the story, and honestly I had a lot of fun following that and kind of going along for the ride, because it was super intense, super dark, very much 7 levels of hell type of thing, and I loved it. Kind of regarding that, I like the fact that the challenges lined up with the 7 deadly sins. I think that's a very fascinating concept that a lot of fantasy books have been following in recent years, like Kingdom of the Wicked, and Anna Huang has a romance series kind of following like those 7 sins in the form of characters. And I do think it's cool when books take that concept and get very creative with it, and I thought that this book did a very good job describing the 7 levels of hell in terms of games that all these characters are playing. And not everyone makes it out, of course, but they were all very different from each other, and honestly just very fascinating to learn about and read about and be involved in as a reader of the story. The mix between the plot and the spice was also very, very well done. I am very much somebody who needs plot with her spice, and it's very easy for me to feel like I'm reading the same thing over and over again if they're just doing it every single chapter. But this book was very much not like that at all. There's always something else going on, and a lot of times the spice helps move the story along. It's not just there to be there, but I thought that it really played a role in not only character development between the two characters, but also the plot development and making it through these games alive for Ophelia while she tries to find her sister, who is also somewhere in the games and is missing, and she does not know where she is. So she's trying to stay alive with Blackwell's help while also falling in love with him and also trying to find her sister. So I thought it all just kind of worked together very nicely and made the story flow super well. Finally, regarding plot, there was a huge plot twist that made me gasp. It freaked me out. I should not have been surprised, but I was, and I loved it. In terms of the characters, we have 2 main ones, Ophelia and Blackwell. Ophelia was a little bit over the top for me at first. Kind of a big character with a big personality, in my opinion, at least when reading from her perspective, because it seems like her sister might have an even bigger personality than Ophelia. But she was a little bit annoying sometimes, I feel like, especially in her attitude. But I did end up really growing to like her, especially as I got to watch her fall in love with Blackwell and how that changed her as a person, how that changed him as a person. I thought that she was a very lovely character and had a lot of perseverance and determination to make it through these games and be a better person than some of the people that she was competing against, while also being willing to do what needed to be done to make it to the next step to save her sister, if that makes sense. So honestly, really liked her in the end. She did have to grow on me a little bit, but I did end up really liking her. Blackwell as a male main character, amazing. I kind of am in love with him. He had so many beautiful lines throughout this book that were like very attractive but also very sweet at times, and I just kind of fell in love with him probably faster than Ophelia did. And he doesn't really know what he is either, like his past is missing, and that's part of why he wants Ophelia to help him. But it's very clear that even though he does have an agenda, he also very much begins to care for Ophelia and really needs to see her stay alive, not just for his own benefit, but because he cares about her own well-being. And I thought that the 2 characters really took good care of each other, and their chemistry was beautiful and their spice was great, and I just, again, could keep reading about them for a long time. And one more small note regarding the chemistry between the 2 characters: it wasn't too slow burn, it wasn't too insta-lovey. The balance was striked very well between those 2 elements, because I feel like in romance it's very easy to go hard one way or the other, but this book was honestly perfect in the speed of the characters' relationship and flowed, like I've already said, very nicely with the plot of the story. I am very curious to see what the second book is all about. It does follow a different set of characters. This does end with a happy ever after, which I'm very, very glad about, but I'm not sure if it'll follow her sister, Ophelia's sister Genevieve, or who her match will be. I'm not gonna look into it because I just kind of want to jump into the story again like I did with this one without knowing too much. So no idea what to expect with the sequel, but I am looking forward to following the next set of characters, especially after how well the characters in this book were developed. Now, regarding my overall thoughts on this book, I'm pulling out my notes again. Definitely, of course, went to read book 2. I was afraid for a long time that this book would not have a happy ever after until my friend Aylin told me that they are companion novels, so this one would end happily ever after, ideally, and then the book 2 would follow a different couple, a different storyline, although it might be like in the same world, I'm guessing. But definitely want to read book 2 after reading Phantasma. I want to read more from this author. I thought that this was such a unique and fun concept and so fascinating and interesting, and I did not want to put this book down. So all of those things tied together make me want to get to book 2 no matter what it's about or who it's about. I was nervous, like I've already said, that this was not going to be a happily ever after. I feel like it's kind of hard to tell with fantasy books if it's going to be a continuing series, and I thought that that might be what this one was when I started getting into it, but of course it's not, and I'm very, very glad about that because I think I would have ended up wanting to rip my hair out for the next couple of months until the sequel gets released. I want to say in the spring of next year, but it might also be closer to summer, I don't know. Books like this very much make me want to read more Romantasy, so if you have any Romantasy recommendations, please feel free to share them with me because I do want to read more books in this vein. It did take me a little bit of time to get into it, especially just in regard to all the paranormal elements of this one, but that's kind of just the nature of this genre, especially as somebody who doesn't read it super often. But I did end up very much falling in love with this book and could not put it down, like I've already said 100 times. So really the only reason that I gave it 4 stars instead of 5 was because it took me a while to not be so confused. I did have to go back and reread parts in the beginning to be able to better handle what was going on or better grasp what was happening in the book, but I did eventually, not super far into the book, get into it and overall like was no longer confused once I was into the book. But there were a couple of times just in regards to the fantasy aspects or like the paranormal beings aspect where I had to kind of go back and reread things and figure out what was going on. So otherwise, great book, had so much fun with it. I think that this author is getting a lot of hype right now, very well deserved hype. I will be one of those people who posts about this book and shares with everybody, but I did very much enjoy this one. I don't do this in my book review videos often, but I wanted to give 2 quotes from Blackwell to close out the video because if y'all heard the way he talked, you'd probably want to jump into this book right away. But he says in the book, "You are the closest thing I will ever get to experiencing heaven, and I am not ready to let it go." Beautiful. So good. He says that to Ophelia. Then he also tells her at the very end of the book, "Every single second I spent with you has reminded me what it's like to be alive, and I would trade every other soul in the world if it meant I would get to keep you forever." That one was sad because I was like, there's no way they're gonna be together in the end. It's not gonna end happily. But spoiler alert, that's the only spoiler I'll give. You do get an HEA with this book, which I am very happy about. But those are my thoughts on Phantasma without spoiling anything. I love books like this that make me want to read more fantasy / romantasy. It's not a genre that I read super often, but books like this are so easy to get into and fly through that I just want to read more. So I'm putting some books on my Christmas wish list that I think will align with the same vibes as this book, but we'll see if I can find anything that matches it. For now though, I'll be waiting very eagerly for book 2, and I kind of hope that book of the month picks it up because I'll be sad if my copies don't match, but that's okay. I still plan to buy a copy of the second book when it comes out, but that's this book for y'all. If you've read Phantasma, please feel free to share your own thoughts on this book. I'm seeing so many people love it, and I'm curious to know if you've read it and if you enjoyed it or not, or if you have any recommendations for books that are like Phantasma, please comment down below. I am itching for more books like this right now and would love to see what you have to recommend for me. But that's all that I have for today's video. Of course, thank you all so much for watching this book review, and I will see you all in the next one.